Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of Laser Brains. This is our first horror episode review. I'm your co-host, Mike L. And as always, I'm joined by...
There is no Joshua Merville.
We're going to talk about The Shining today.
Don't be scared. Don't be scared. It's just a movie review.
It's just the
it's
boy
just
that lives
a-
in his mouth.
Yeah,
That's right.
Exactly.
I'm going to push him right on down to my stomach. We're good. We're also joined by Ian, of course.
Hi, I don't know anything clever. I forgot my axe at home.
Okay, so let's just talk about The Shining. Everyone knows the plot. We don't need to talk about the plot. Everyone who's watching this review has seen the movie.
Yes.
Except
if
TJ.
Well, you've seen it now.
Yeah,
there
now
was
he
a couple
has.
people that hadn't seen it.
Really?
Nick hadn't seen it. It was Nick's first time.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was a
Okay.
little shocked by
Which
that.
is, he's a big movie guy, so I was shocked.
He's
he hadn't
actually
seen that,
watched
but-
this podcast before. Hey, Nick, we're probably speaking to you directly right now.
Yeah,
are we?
exactly.
Okay, let's talk about our first exposure. I probably saw this as a kid. So it came out in 80. I was born in 76, so I probably saw it when I was like 11, 12. But the thing is, I didn't know who Stanley Kubrick was at the time. But the one thing I noticed about this movie is it's one of the first movies that if it was on TV, every year around Halloween, I found I could watch it over and over again. I never got bored of it. And then it was years later that I realized, then I saw 2001 and I realized it was the same director and I pieced it all together. But yeah, so one of my favorite horrors of my whole life. But Ian, what's your experience with it?
I don't remember the first time that I saw it. It's just one of those things that's always kind of been there. And I think that it's one of those movies that I probably saw parts of it on TV, and then I saw more parts of it, and then I saw more parts of it. And then you get a lot of it, you absorb a lot of it through just cultural zeitgeist as well, since it's such an iconic film that it is seeped into the popular culture. So I can't tell you when the first time that I really saw it, but I've probably seen it 10 times since.
Interesting. Okay. Josh?
Yeah, one of my best friends, he introduced me to this movie in high school, I think. And I, like you, I had kind of seen bits and parts of it, and like I felt at the time that I'd already seen the movie just because of how much it's referenced in things, and I thought that I kind of knew the movie even going into it, watching it for the first time, and was just kind of blown away the first. It was unbelievable, and I've definitely seen it quite a few times since. It's hard to like not watch it when it's on. Like it's hard to look away. There's just it really pulls you in.
That's the key. That's the
Yeah.
key. There's two things I want to talk about because you
Okay.
mentioned pulling the viewer in. Okay, so Stanley Kubrick has said he purposely starts his films slowly because he wants to pull you in. Okay, and I was once having a conversation with a friend of ours, Marshall Falchine, and we were talking about Stanley Kubrick dialogue. And the way that it's written and the way that it's directed is very slow paced. And there's an unnatural amount of pausing in between lines. Okay. And so we were going for a walk. And so Marshall's like, yeah, it's like if me and you were in a Stanley Kubrick movie, we'd be talking like this. Hey, how's it going, Mike? Well, pretty good, Marshall. How's it going with you? And then we talked like that for about 30 seconds. But I noticed, I'm like, I'm being pulled in. Oh no, I'm being hypnotized, just like the way Stanley Kubrick does it, because there's something about the rhythm. It's as simple as hypnotism. And the other hint I think to that is, I think that's a purposeful technique, is when Danny is riding on his big wheel and it's going. I remember as a teenager going, why is he spending so much time on this? And then it clicked. I go, he's hypnotizing us. I really think that's what he's doing.
What do the kids call? The kids call it like ASMR now or something,
Right.
There's some elements to that where
It's
it's a sound that kind of gets you on a very, very deep level.
Yeah, but I think in this case too, it almost like puts you on edge. It's like
Yes.
the opposite of ASMR. You know what I mean? Like it's like, and they do that a couple of times until there is that moment where he's riding his bike and he turns the corner and the twins are there, and it really kind of builds up the suspense. And even like cut to Wendy a couple of times doing something really mundane at the start, and then it cuts to him going through the halls, and then it's like the next day, and then it cuts to her and she's doing something, and then he's running through the halls. Like, it's very rhythmic and how it's done.
Well, sorry.
And kind of going off with what you were saying too, with like the editing and the dialogue, it really kind of caught me off guard this watch, how weird the editing and dialogue is when Jack is interviewing for the job.
Yes.
Because it almost like it shows the character like full, like front on for their entire line, and then there's a beat, and then it cuts to the next person, and then they say their dialogue for the full beat. Like, there's no overlap, there's no like, it's so strange. And then as the movie goes on, it kind of makes sense almost. Like, I don't know how to put it. Like, it at the start, it's strange.
It almost feels amateur.
Yeah.
At the beginning. Like, if you were only to watch the first 10, 15 minutes of it, you'd think that this was a student film that, like a first year student film that just happened to have Jack Nicholson in it.
Yeah.
No, but I think you've hit on something, because I've seen this movie so many times that now I was watching it through the point of view of the people in the room. Like, you know, sometimes you feel like, oh, is everyone enjoying it? And I think I tried to watch it from the point of view of like just a plot. Like, okay, so what's happening now? Well, there's a lot of scenes in this movie where almost nothing happens. Like, it'll say Thursday, and then it'll just be a shot of Jack Nicholson, you know, throwing the ball, and then Wednesday or whatever. And then one of my favorite ones is when he just walks over to the maze and he looks down, and it's almost like Beetlejuice. He looks down at a model, and when it cuts to the POV, it's a real overhead shot, which I don't know how they did, because drones didn't exist, and if it was in a helicopter, there would have been movement, and how did they get hold it still?
Well, some sort of steady cam. I mean, that the opening shots, which are gorgeous, of the car driving, those are all done by helicopter. So they had access to a helicopter
with a steady cam, maybe.
Yeah, because those shots were very, very steady as well.
Oh, incredible! But the thing is
but like, that, just to touch back on that scene, like that, I'd never really noticed that scene. Like, I'd noticed that scene, but it never really clicked that like that's the moment where you sort of get the sense that Jack is evil, and he has some sort of other sight that we don't know about, right? Like he's looking down at a model, and then we flip over and we see them, but in a way it's like he's seeing them.
Yes.
And that's inferred.
Oh yes,
that he knows what's going on, even though he doesn't know what's going on.
I think that's a genius cut. Genius. And the thing is, like, okay, you talked about how you said it could be like a student film if you didn't know any better. There are so many things in this movie and in all of Kubrick's movies that he does that defy convention. First of all, he doesn't really frame his shots like a normal cinematographer. He doesn't use lighting like a normal cinematographer. Like you said, it's like proto Wes Anderson, straight on angle. They say, and you know, it's like the basics of editing. You overlap lines, you know, reactions. There's none of that. It's line, pause. But it's like you said, it's like as it builds up over time, it's almost like it wears you down, and it's just like you get it, and it pulls you in, and it all adds up to something, and there's payoff.
Yeah, and I know we kind of said that like it feels almost amateur at the start, but every beat is very intentional. Like it's down to the frame. It feels like this movie was edited. And it 100% works with that kind of
right down to the cross dissolves. I think right. You know that they're very slow, and you hang quite a bit longer than you would normally, but you can see like things that are happening after the scene is ended.
Yes,
which gives it just this extra. I don't know, like it makes you uneasy in a way, because it's as though something's wrong, but it gives you these little glimpses into what's going on,
right?
Things that you maybe shouldn't know about.
Yeah, those long pauses help with the tense scenes. Like it mirrors it almost, right? We have those moments where they're just talking and it feels like it's staying on them for too long, but then we have the shots where we are following him on the tricycle and it feels like it's happening for too long, and then later on, even when we're following Scatman Crothers, what's his name?
Halloran? I can't remember his last name.
Yeah. Oh, Halloran. Yeah.
Halloran? And they build up and they build up.
And he's just like slowly, and it's just like the footsteps, and it's terrifying. And then even when Jack jumps out and hits him with the axe, it doesn't cut. It doesn't do like a quick cut.
Sure.
And you see the thing. No, it's the same frame, like far away from him, as he just jumps into frame and hits him with the axe. It's crazy that it is that terrifying. And it works so well because it's like, why does it work so well?
That's a good,
it's crazy. It's
Well, I know that when Stephen King, the author of the book, saw this film, he hated it, and he said that it was like Stanley Kubrick had never seen a scary movie before. Okay. And
while defining the scary movie.
Well, that's the thing is that think about all the things that he disobeys. There's no dark shadows, things hiding in corners. No, this is everything's brightly lit. Almost like a flat pastel-y color palette. Like scenes where almost nothing happens. There's almost no jump scares. There's no false scares. There's no cat hiding behind, a thing. So it is like he's never seen a scary movie before, but at the same time, he's managed to make one of the scariest movies ever made. Yeah. In fact, I read a review, this book about Stanley Kubrick, and they were talking about the scene where he goes into the 237 and is the woman in there, right? And he basically criticizes the part where he's making out with her, and then you see the shocked reaction on his face, and then he notices her, and he's like, "Oh, this is done so badly. He should have done it this way, or this way, or this way." But every time I watch it, I'm like, no, he did it exactly right. He's first of all, the look on his face when he sees this attractive naked woman, he just gets this like evil, like just a lusty
little sneer.
I love it. But then he starts kissing her, and I love how we see a hint, like he's kissing her. First of all, this movie is so well done that at first I thought he was kissing the young woman, but he wasn't. I think it was the old woman the whole time. You just don't realize it. But then you see his face first, then you see the reflection, then you see the woman's face. It's so well done, right?
Yeah. And even though you really can't see him because he's got his face buried in this corpse girl, you can still tell, like, as he's slowly coming to realization. He's like, something's up. Yeah, something's up, right? Like, she's not kissing back. What? Oh God. And it takes him 10 seconds to get there.
Okay, so there's other things too. Like, there's other weird like frames in this movie, like just even the part where he comes back in from the snow and Danny had been hiding underneath that like shelving thing or whatever it was, and then he comes out. Again, it's like you said, or you said, Ian. It feels like it's framed very amateurishly, but it still works. And it actually, I saw some behind the scenes footage, and the scene where Jack Nicholson is smashing through the door with an axe. Guess who's operating the camera? Stanley Kubrick, not the camera guy. No, there's like a crew of seven. Yeah, he actually is good, just like on a simple pan, just like watching, like as he swings the axe, the camera pans.
Right, the camera is panning with the axe.
And that's just Stanley Kubrick doing that. It's again, I think he's just so advanced in all aspects of filmmaking that it's like he does everything wrong, but it ends up working anyway. Right. That's what I think. So there's lots to talk about. Okay, we're going to leave the best for last, but let's talk about the actors in this film. Okay, so you got your bust out Wikipedia here. So first of all, we have Wendy Torres. Is that her last name?
Yeah.
Torrance. I've seen the movie 1,000 times.
Shelley Duvall.
Who she passed away recently, didn't she?
Just very recently. Yeah. And the only other huge movie I know her from is Popeye, but she was a fairly established actress at the time. And I personally think for this role, she is absolutely perfect because she's able to play this character. She's so meek and timid, but the ironic and to be fair, at the beginning of the film, she's also defending Jack Nicholson's abuse of the son, like just completely obliviously. But I love the fact that of all people, this woman by the end defies all of the ghosts the tradition of this hotel and actually manages to fight back and outsmart Jack. So I think she was perfect for it. What do you think, Ian?
I think, all right, you talk to people about The Shining, and they will go on and on and on about Jack Nicholson's performance. I think Shelley Duvall stole the show here. I think that Jack Nicholson was great, but Shelley Duvall just a little bit above. Mm-hmm. She, start to finish, sold me on everything about her character. This mentally, emotionally abused housewife, and she's watching her reality sort of collapse around her, and she has to pick up these pieces and to try to save her kid. Mm. And her fear and her confusion is palpable. You're watching her. She never goes over the top. She comes right up to the top, but she never goes too far. There's just something I could go on all day about how good a performance she put in.
Well, like when she's reacting to Jack Nicholson smashing through, it is terrifying. Her reaction sells it, right?
And again, it is one of those shots where we don't move. Like we're standing like opposite to her, like the camera is standing opposite to her against the wall with the door right here, like it doesn't cut away. Like it's so terrifying, and she looks just so frail and scared. Like even she has this gigantic knife, and still just the way that she's moving with it like I'm so scared for her the entire
so many examples
film.
of that. The way that she holds the baseball bat.
Yeah, in the middle.
Like holds it in the middle while she's trying to swing it. The scene when she's talking to the doctor at the beginning about telling the story about how Jack dislocated Danny's arm, and she's trying to rationalize his abuse. And you can see her trying to convince herself this as she's telling the story. Every single scene that she's in. When she locks him, Jack, in the pantry, and she's in tears, but she's like, "We're gonna go now. I have to get Danny out of here. I'll bring a doctor back." Right? Every single scene that she's in is just unbelievable.
I agree.
Stunning.
I think she's perfect. And I do want to point out, I love that scene when she's telling the story to the doctor at the beginning. Because of the editing we talked about, the camera holds on her for an unnaturally long amount of time. Oh, yeah. Okay? But then after she's telling the story and smiling about abusing her son, about Jack abusing her son, it cuts to the doctor's face. Because the last time we saw the doctor, she had a big smile on her face. But then when we cut to the doctor after the story, the doctor's like,
yeah, she's not having any of
what the
that.
fuck are you talking about? So incredible intentional editing. Anyway, okay, now the actor that played Danny Torrance is
Danny Lloyd.
Danny Lloyd.
Not to be confused with Jake Lloyd.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Great actor. His name is
Danny Lloyd.
Oh, Danny Lloyd. Wait.
Yeah.
So who did he play?
Danny
Torrance.
Oh, that's see. Okay. Okay. That's where I was thrown off. Okay.
Yeah, because Jack is also named Jack.
Yeah, I know. Jack Nicholson. Anyway, great. I'm not kidding. This kid was note perfect, right?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Like it's almost like frightening how well they got a performance of this kid. I believe this is one of those movies where they might have told the kid, by the way, this is just a comedy, just played for laughs. And I don't think he knew the whole time what he was actually doing. I could be wrong.
He didn't play anything funny, though.
No.
Not at all.
He was perfect. And by the way, again, I'm 13, 14 years old seeing this movie for the first time. That voice and that finger scared the shit out of me as a kid, right?
Yeah.
Just the fact that he can he can be all nice and smiley, and then just you can see that little turn and he starts talking to his finger. Whoa. Like incredible. Right?
Yeah. Like even those like small moments where when he's just like brushing his teeth or whatever, like it's just so off-putting. And I'm assuming it was his voice. Like that was actually,
as far as I know, it was him. Yeah.
Danny doing it. If it wasn't and they had like some sort of ADR or something, it was done so incredibly well. Because I feel like it is. Like I still feel like that was the kid's voice.
Oh, I think
doing
it was.
That. Yeah, like it's terrifying in such a simple way. Like it almost seems like goofy. Like it shouldn't be terrifying.
Right. It's another thing that shouldn't be terrifying, but it is. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Even just the idea. Well, who's Tony? Oh, he's the little boy that lives in my mouth. Like, ooh. And then can we talk to Tony? Oh no. sometimes he hides in my stomach. Like, what the fuck? Who thinks of this?
Yeah.
Stephen King? Oh, that's right. He was an alcoholic at the time. He probably was on other drugs.
Yeah,
so he
he's
might have been
on
under the
plenty of
influence
drugs.
of chemicals. But what an imagination. So yeah, Danny Lloyd. What do you think, Ian?
You talk to people about this movie, and they'll go on and on about Jack Nicholson's performance and how great it is. But I think Danny Lloyd
Steals the show.
he steals the show. He comes in right underneath.
Yeah.
right underneath.
Right.
I mean, sorry, Jack Nicholson is the third banana.
I
in this
agree.
film. Danny Lloyd, an incredible performance. These things when he's the boy that lives in my mouth, and sometimes he hides in my stomach. These are the words of a child.
yeah.
This comes from
Yeah.
the imagination of a child.
yeah.
So these things, they all make sense when you look at them in that
Yeah.
sense.
Right.
But you see these little details that Danny's doing when he's talking to himself, when he's having a conversation with Tony, and he's scared. Tony, I'm scared. And you can see the fear in his eyes. And then Tony starts to speak, and the fear is gone. And then
That
Danny
makes me
speaks
scared.
again, and the fear is back. Like
Yeah.
one scene, it'll be back and forth,
Yes.
with no cuts.
Yeah.
No cuts. It's just him changing his mental state. And this kid's like 3 years old. He's a genius.
And can we talk about when Danny's gone
Yeah.
and it's
yeah.
just Tony? It's like I
Yep.
don't know how he was able to stay in that character for so long, and it's
My favorite little Danny bit comes right at the beginning. It's when we first are introduced to Tony, and I think it's he's brushing his teeth in the mirror scene, and his dad has just got the job at the Overlook, and Tony knows that something's up about this place, but he refuses to tell Danny. Danny's like, Tony, tell me. No, I'm not going to tell you. And then he keeps pressing him, and then Tony's just like, no. And he closes his hand. And Tony doesn't talk anymore for a little bit, right? But just that. Who came up with that? Was that Danny that came up with that? Was that the kid actor? Because I've read that this was the kid's idea.
Come on.
really
What
Yeah.
the hell?
Yeah. The little
Genius.
finger thing was Danny Lloyd's idea.
That's even scarier. Jesus Christ. Anyway, I'm scared now.
maybe Danny really does have the shin.
Yeah, could be.
Trying to get sued?
So, okay, now we're going to talk about the other top banana, and that's Scatman Crothers,
Right.
who is most famous as the voice of Jazz from Transformers, but apparently he's done other roles. Perfect. Can't say anything about him. Obviously, I love his voice. Everyone loves his voice. But just the way that he's introduced to Danny and when he's bringing him through the tour of the Overlook. Oh, okay. You want to talk about things? They're so simple and they shouldn't work, but he's been talking to Danny, and then Danny's off to the side, and and then Scatman Crothers is talking to the mother, and then in the middle of his conversation, he looks over at Danny, and he uses The Shining to ask him if he wants ice cream. It is so unsettling, and combined with the music like that.
The score has a lot to do with
Oh
it.
my God. It's just such a simple technique, but it works, right?
Yeah.
Just incredible. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I mean, again, the decision to build him up so much, the watching the TV, the calling, the waiting, the calling, the plane ride, the call to his friend, then the snowplow, and then in 1 millisecond he gets killed. But it's awesome, right?
Yeah.
What do you think?
He's fantastic. I forgot honestly about him and his acting when watching it today. So when he was first introduced, I was like, oh no, like I don't know if his acting is gonna age well. I can't quite remember. And then even at the start, I'm like, it's okay. And then when he actually has the conversation with Danny over ice cream and they're talking to each other, and he explains The Shining and how they communicate with each other, I was like, whoa, this is actually a great performance. I totally, it was totally lost on me after everything else that happened in this movie. But
good he
he's
was.
great. Yeah, he's good.
And that particular scene, I love that scene because this movie is Stanley Kubrick's movie, right?
Yeah.
But it's based on a Stephen King book. That little conversation, that is, in my opinion, that's the Stephen King coming through. When Scatman Crothers is talking to Danny, he's like, Yeah, me and my grandmother used to be able to have entire conversations without saying a word. She used to call it shining. And at that moment, it's like, yeah, I've read a little bit of Stephen King. That is totally his vibe. Just having this mysticism that's part of the lore that isn't like you don't draw too much attention to it,
Right.
but you explain it just a little bit, and now it's real.
Yeah.
And it's perfect. They gave us just enough of that exposition, and the way that he did it too. It just like it kind of it makes you feel warm, right? Because now you're sort of like you're invoking him and his grandmother sitting on the porch and just having a silent conversation, and there's a sweetness to it.
That's a good
and for
point.
him to share that with this little kid that's got the same thing, he's a little scared in a new place. It's a touching moment.
That's a great point. There's two more actors I want to talk about. The one I really want to talk about, if I can see your interweb there, the guy who plays the older man in the bathroom. What's his name again?
Oh, Philip Stone. He plays
Philip
Grady.
Stone plays Grady. A bit part, but so perfect. And here's the thing. I've seen this movie 1,000 times. I haven't read the novel. And I'm sure that this is easily explained in the reviews or the book. But the scene where he's in the bathroom, what do you guys think? And again, viewers, you can get mad at me and saying how stupid I am for not knowing this. But why do you think, what's the significance of him thinking that Grady is the killer? And then Grady saying, no. You are the, what is he saying? You're the
caretaker. You've
always
always
been the caretaker. I would know. I've always been here. Like, what do you think the significance? Because they spend 10 minutes on that scene, so it must be significant, right?
It seems like it is some sort of like possession or reincarnation of this old caretaker that is in Jack. And I think a lot of these scenes are him kind of realizing that he's had this sort of past life, right? Like, it's strange. I when I first came here, it's like it's the strangest form of deja vu. You know what I mean?
And
like
then at the end, obviously, he is a reincarnation of the guy.
Right. Yeah. So I feel like it's almost like this like crazy form of deja vu coming to life of like his present and his past kind of like combining at a certain point and having this like connection with his past life in the hotel. But yeah, again, I'm sure that there's plenty of theories because it is supposed to be ambiguous, right? It's supposed to not really have a 100% answer from what I understand.
Well, I can only say, I want to say one more thing about that scene. Did you ever watch the TV movie miniseries adaptation of The Shining from the 90s?
No.
There's
There
another
is
version.
such a thing?
There is such a thing.
Is it as horrifying as I imagine
It's
that it
not
must
good. The main actor, I don't remember his name, but he was the star of Northern Exposure. He was one of the guys, and the girl was Rebecca De Mornay from Risky Business. Do you know her?
I am familiar with
Yeah.
her.
It wasn't a good movie. Rebecca De Mornay was great. But in the scene, like, you know when Jack Nicholson goes into the room and then the bartender's just there, and then later on he goes back and there's like 100 people.
Yeah, big plot hole. There shouldn't be anybody in the...
Well, yeah. But in the TV movie, which is a more direct adaptation, the director decided that when he's walking through and he sees all the ghosts, the camera then cuts and shows what's really happening. He's just in a big empty room and he's imagining it all. Like,
like we needed that.
what a way to completely destroy the mood and the tone of the film, right? Anyway, that doesn't really explain the bathroom scene, but I would like to know if how much of that dialogue was Kubrick's and how much was Stephen King's, because it's very Kubrickian to me. It's like almost like poetic, and it's so sparse and just so like, no, you're the caretaker. You've always been the caretaker. And even though you don't even quite know what it means or why he's confused, it hits you, right? What do you think, Ian?
Yeah. I don't think I'll ever be successful in my own personal analysis of these things. Everyone in this movie is losing their mind in one way or another. Jack is obvious. Shelley Duvall, she had lost her mind before the movie even started. and Danny has got this power that he's too young to understand, and he's unable to. Like everyone is losing their minds.
Sure.
So how you don't have a what do they call it a reliable narrator?
Sure.
Right?
That's a good point.
Right, yeah.
You don't have one of these in this movie. Scatman Crothers could have been, but he had The Shining too. So there's really nobody who's just a person who is looking at things that are going on and that we can say their reality is the true reality. There are so many things that happen that don't happen, things that are imagined, but maybe they're real. You can't tell. We see them and then they're gone, but then there are physical manifestations like Danny's ripped sweater and the bruise on his neck. So something is really happening. Was that Jack? We don't know.
Who let Jack Nicholson out of the storage room?
Yeah.
Was it
We
the
don't know
ghost?
how
Was
these
it
things
Danny?
happened.
Right.
And we never can know because we don't have a single person in this film where we can say their perspective is the correct
That's
perspective.
a good point.
So when we look at a scene like the bathroom scene, hey, your guess is as good as mine. I look at it as it just being Jack's continuing descent into his madness and him deciding that he's always been here for whatever reason. He just decides that then, and
Interesting.
he makes the decision that now he has to kill his family.
So, okay, so you mentioned something about there's no reliable narrator. The sense I get from watching most of Kubrick's movies, but especially around this era, is that when you're watching a typical movie, you feel like the director is somewhat trying to mimic real behavior. Like the actors are behaving like real people and they're trying to mimic real conversation. But in this movie, I never feel like that. I feel like I can't even describe how it is, but when Jack's doing the interview and then they cut to the other guy listening, that's the only moment where it feels like, oh, that's a real person. And these two are in a freaking dream world. When Scatman Crothers calls his buddy and his buddy answers, again, it's like, this is not a real movie. This feels like the closest I can give is, sometimes, like, especially when you're a kid, you fall asleep on like a couch and you're asleep, but you can still hear everybody talking.
Yeah.
That's what this movie feels like to me. It's like you can see everybody talking, but it never feels like they're real and they're not acting like real people.
And then when somebody who is just a real person shows up in the movie, it feels almost more strange than what's
Jarring.
Yes.
what's actually happening.
Yeah. Whew. Okay, so there's one other actor we have to talk about, and that's Jack Nicholson, who plays Jack
Torrance.
Halloran. Yes. Okay. Jack Nicholson. So he was already a star in the 70s. He starred in Easy Rider, 5 Easy Pieces, The Last Detail, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, blah, 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 blah. And this made him, I think, a superstar. Now, apparently, I'm just going to go back to reactions at the time. Steven Spielberg actually told Kubrick he did not like Nicholson's performance in this. He thought it was over the top.
Huh. And it is, but
It is over the top, but the question is it appropriate? I know another thing, I think Stephen King thought that the problem with the movie is he's crazy from the first time you see him.
I have that issue with it as well.
So, what do you think, Ian?
It's not a big issue.
Okay.
It's not a big issue. Like it does not hamper my enjoyment of the movie, but you can tell right away that he hates his wife. He doesn't like that he's got a kid. He's trying to get away from everything and everyone, and there's something not right in his head. And he's trying to hold it together. I think, like, who am I to say, well, Stanley Kubrick should have done this?
Sure.
But I think that I would have enjoyed Jack's character more had he been a little bit relatable at some point.
Sure.
A little bit at some point. Like there's no point in this movie where you can look at him and say he's a good guy. And I don't know. It would balance his over the top acting if he came down from it at some point. And I think that we get a little bogged down in him being crazy sometimes.
Sure.
Right. I think that especially like in the second act, when maybe he should be trying a little bit harder to hold things together.
Sure.
He's off the rails a little bit too quick.
Okay. Josh, what do you think?
yeah, I think I get what you're saying. Because at the start, there is something off about him. We assume that he is just abusive or used to be abusive, and and is either hiding it or has kind of resolved that kind of past life through his sobriety. And it's strange because we do kind of already, I don't know, I've never really thought about that, to be honest, about like him being crazy from the start. I don't know if I fully get that myself. I feel like we do feel something is off, but I just assume that he's kind of a bad dude.
Yeah.
And not like crazy yet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like to me, when he's in the interview at the beginning, that's the most normal he is in the whole movie.
And even then, he's doing those like.
I know he's still overacting, like not overacting, but he's just doing his thing. Yeah. I think his best acting in the movie for me is when Wendy interrupts him when he's writing. That's his best. Like it is note perfect, and I think everyone who watches that film feels exactly what Wendy feels. Now get the fuck out of here.
Yeah,
right?
you're tipped. It doesn't matter who you are. You're gonna tiptoe out of the room after that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But then the one scene in the movie where maybe he goes too over the top is when he's talking to the bartender, and he's like, he's just doing his routine, and it's Jack Nicholson, and of course it's funny, and of course it's good because it's Jack Nicholson. But that's the one scene in the movie where I think maybe they should have done another take or used a different take.
I think they should have gone in a completely different direction because I agree completely with that scene. That's one of the big. That's not one of the big problems. I don't have big problems with this movie. But imagine that scene and he lets his guard down.
Sure.
Imagine the scene and he's opening up to the bartender.
Right.
And he's mentioning that he's struggling and he's relatable, right? Like he's not crazy anymore because he's not really drinking because he doesn't really. There's nobody there, but he thinks he's drinking and it takes the edge off and now he's normal for a bit. Mm-hmm. And maybe we can use that normalcy to make him easier to manipulate, right? Bartender gains some trust, and because it is the bartender that kind of convinces him, yeah, it's time to kill your family.
Right.
So have them have a trust that goes beyond him just giving him the drink.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a fair point. That's a really good insight.
Or even having the bartender and the what's his name? Brady. Yeah. Having him kind of like give each other a look or something, you know what I mean? To kind of realize that maybe like the house is realizing that they're losing him a little bit and they need to kind of take control before.
Okay, like he softens.
Before Danny needs to. Yeah.
I know what you're saying, but I think that would burst the bubble a little bit because if there are ghosts, I think them looking at each other and us seeing them plot makes it too.
Right.
Like I think we only want to see what Jack Nicholson sees, and when he's locked up in that room and we hear the voice, I think it's good that we don't see the ghost.
Gotcha.
I think
if the ghosts talk to each other, now we know that the ghosts are real.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. So I don't know what else to say about this movie. I really do think it's one of the best horror movies ever made. I
got a couple things about this movie that sort of bug me a little bit. Nitpicks. Well, at the very end, when Jack is chasing Danny around and Wendy is just sort of exploring the hotel on her own because there's nothing for her to do anymore, and she keeps finding these little silly things like the guy in the pig costume for some reason.
Yeah.
Like what's
the teddy bear, right?
The teddy bear.
Yeah.
You mean filleting
the businessman?
Yeah.
Is there some reason why that's in the movie? Or the when she walks into the room and everyone's just dusty skeletons? Is there a reason that's in the movie? Like,
well, okay. First, that the skeletons thing is a cliche, a horror cliche. Mm-hmm. But the reason I like it is because I think that shows what's actually there. Maybe I don't know if it's really there or if it's just a vision, but it's like. We had seen the POV of like this party and now we're seeing what's really there. That's how I see it. Mm-hmm. So I don't mind that. The guy talking to her, remember when he's holding the drink? He's like, great party,
isn't
and he's
it?
got like, I think it's like, again, that's sort of cliche, but maybe 40 years ago it wasn't as cliche. Maybe it's been done more now. But the guy in the bear suit filleting the guy, I like that because that is, you're like, what the fuck is going on? And that's why I like it, because it's not trying to be scary. It's just like, what was happening at these parties?
But
I like
at
it.
the same time, you have that. And the other thing about that little sequence is that every time she sees something, we get a reaction shot of her going, ah, and then we get that musical sting with the
yeah, like
and
Psycho, yeah.
The seventh time in a row that happens in 90 seconds, it gets a little
Too
repetitive.
much. They could have cut out one or two of them, you're saying?
Or all of them,
Or
but
all of them?
it didn't seem like it was there for any reason other than to give Shelley Duvall something to do for this couple of minutes.
Well, I think she was looking for Danny. She couldn't find him. And then as
Yeah.
she was looking, because it is kind of a trope, like her seeing Scatman Crothers on the ground. That reminds me of in Halloween. There is a point, I don't want to spoil it. Have you seen Halloween?
Yes.
Okay, you've seen Halloween, where Jamie Lee Curtis, I think she comes across like, oh no, this friend is dead. Oh no, this other friend is dead. Oh no, this friend's dead. So it's kind of like that. It's like now it's the end of the movie, and now we're gonna throw everything at you, and you're gonna see what's actually been going on. So maybe it wasn't handled perfectly, but I think that's the idea.
It doesn't. I don't know. I don't think it fits the tone of everything
Okay.
else that's happened.
Is there anything?
That's all. I think
the
that's all
only
I gotta
nitpick?
say. Yeah. I don't want people to get mad at me.
Well, again, I do plan to read the novel because I want to find out how much Kubrick changed. I know he changed a lot, but I did love the book. So.
Yeah, I should put that on my reading list. That is a little bit strange to kind of have all of these things thrown in because it's been so subtle throughout.
Sure.
So to have her show up and see all of these ghosts is a little bit strange. I like the guy showing up with like the one guy with like the bloodied skull saying great party or whatever, and then she runs because then it kind of she can maybe later on like dismiss that as like, oh, I must have been imagining things in my, but like walking into every room and seeing ghosts and skeletons and stuff, I think it does kind of maybe take away from the subtlety from the rest of the movie.
Okay. Now, I want to go on a high note, though. I want to say something really good about this movie. The other thing about this movie is that the editing style, the montage editing style of cutting to these flash forwards and these flashbacks of the blood coming out of the elevator and then flashing to Danny almost having like a seizure and then cutting to the girls. That's something you didn't see in movies then, you barely see now. But it's so well done and so effective and so simple. Even just the two girls, that's such a simple thing. Let's get two twins. We got the two twins. They're talking at the same time, but it works. It's so creepy. And that blood thing, there's no way I don't think it's in the book, but it's such a perfect vision. Slow motion blood pouring out of an elevator with that music playing. Again, when I was a kid, I was like, what the hell is this? I just think it's
so surreal.
It's so surreal and so effective. Anyway, I just wanted to say that. I think it's so well done.
Another thing to kind of off of that, one thing that I always take away from this movie is just how visually stunning it is.
Oh yeah.
Like the hotel is amazing. Even down to the design of the carpets in the halls, it's right. Yeah, it's crazy, and it feels so off-putting while being just a room. You know, it's just a hallway or it's just a kitchen, but there is something so terrifying in the mundane of this hotel. Like
that's a great way to put it. Terror in the mundane, because there is so much about this hotel that it feels completely lived in.
Right.
It feels, well, I mean, they shot it in a real resort hotel, but the little details, they don't mean anything. But when you're in the pantry and he's just surrounded by crates of food and giant food service size cans of ketchup, and
it's like gas station security video lighting. It's just flat, dull, boring lighting, right?
But that's how it would be if you're in this room. And you're all you're seeing brands that exist,
right? Like Heinz,
Heinz and Libby's and
Oreo.
It's just it doesn't mean anything, but it's familiar. These are things that exist in the world, and I'm seeing them here. And it just gives it this extra realism. But I don't know why, because you're right. The terror and the mundane, like why these perfectly flat scenes of things that aren't scary at all.
Mm-hmm.
A big kitchen. Why is it so creepy?
Yeah.
What is Kubrick doing? Is it some sort of camera angle trick that we're not picking up on because it's too subtle, but it's working?
I think it's the editing, because why is the Roadrunner cartoon terrifying in this movie?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't see it. You're just seeing Danny staring at the screen and the music is playing, and just the music and like the audio feels like, I don't know, like you have this like knot in your stomach for nothing.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah. I think also, as far as the flatness of the lighting, it's like a good photographer. A good photographer will take a picture of this glass and somehow make it look better than a bad photographer. And I think a lesser cinematographer would have lit that scene in the storage room with like, a pot light and shadow and all this other crap.
Yeah, like a light bulb that's swaying.
Yeah.
Trying to throw us off with the shadows
and then
moving.
a close up of a sweaty face and a cutaway and blah blah blah. And Stanley Kubrick just throws all that out the window, and he does it as plain as possible, but somehow he manages to make it just so effective, right? Like again, like everything is very intentional. It's done for a purpose, right? And it's funny you mentioned the Roadrunner theme song, because that was the Roadrunner theme song when I was a kid, because that was like whatever reincarnation it was of the show. But I always thought the guy's voice was creepy. And it's like, it's supposed to be this happy kids show. It's just like there's a weird creepiness to the melody. And maybe that's why he picked it. Or maybe I think it's creepy because I saw it in this movie in 1980, right? I have no idea.
they're even talking about how the Roadrunner is trying to, or the Wile E. Coyote is trying to kill the Roadrunner, and he's chasing him down. Like, even that aspect, I feel like it could, like, I feel like if it was done in any other way, it would have been corny too.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, we get it. The TV is saying what's happening in the movie, but it's genuinely terrifying in this movie.
It's so like everything else. There's a subtlety to everything that you don't know what's intentional and what's not.
Yeah,
I've read online theories that the layout of the hotel is intentionally nonsensical.
Yeah,
right?
I was going to mention that.
It can't exist in reality, and people have mapped it out to say, oh, you go in here and you come out here, and it's meant to keep you confused. If they are doing that intentionally, it's done so subtly that you can't tell,
right?
Which makes it hard to know if it's intentional or not, right?
It makes sense.
And I think that. Like, I think that's part of the genius of the filmmaking, is that you don't know if these things happened on purpose.
Well, there was another film I saw, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was one of those kind of post-apocalyptic films. It was a horror, and they did the same trick. And I was watching the film going, that hallway's way too long. Like, where's that room? How does that connect? And then you read later that it was on purpose. And maybe they got the idea from this movie, right?
Oh, they
surely had to have. But like, what a great idea. It's just another thing to make it unsettling, right? And like dreamlike, right? Very dreamlike. That's, I think, the key. Even the scene in the bathroom, brightly lit, two angles, but it's so dreamlike.
When she was stepping out of the tub, it almost looked like she was superimposed in the scene, because it just felt so strange and like flat.
Right.
Like I was expecting something to happen then, because it didn't feel quite right in those shots.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say. I love this movie. It's one of my favorite horror films. I think everyone seemed to like it. You mentioned a couple people had never seen it before. So one of them didn't like it. The other did.
Who didn't like it?
Well, I don't want to say who it was.
Well, I want you to say.
TJ did not like the film.
Oh my goodness.
Well, maybe he liked it, but he said he had some
issues
with it.
Well, I mean, I've got some issues with it too. They're
Sure.
little. Well, they're little.
Tiny.
Sure, yeah.
But no film is completely perfect except for Ghostbusters.
Exactly. And Back to the Future.
And
But
Back to the
anyway,
Future.
so there you go. Our first horror review. We will actually be doing more horror films in the next few episodes. episodes because we're recording this on October 2nd.
Yes.
So you'll be seeing a few horror movies in a row, and who knows, if you want to see more horror, maybe we'll do more horror, right?
Or maybe we'll start a horror movie podcast.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, a competing.
We don't have
Because we
enough of
have, we have
those.
time
Yeah.
for that.
There you go. So that's it. We want to thank Champion for having us here, as he does every Wednesday and sometimes Tuesdays at Meteor. Different movie every week. Be sure to join us if you're in the Windsor Essex area or Detroit. You're welcome to come in from Detroit or the Michigan area. Why not, right?
Yeah. Or fly down from Boulder, Colorado.
Yeah,
The weather's beautiful. It's still getting colder out, but we got a snowcat you can use.
You got it. All right, Josh. And where can everybody find our episodes?
Yeah, you can find all of our stuff over on our website at thecomicbooksyndicate.com. You can also find all of our video format podcasts on our YouTube channel. Let us know what you guys think about the stuff we're talking about. What did you think about The Shining? Let us know in a comment, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Till next time. See you later.